wyverns, Rio feels confident, and he believes he wouldn't mind if they came across more of them. But Abel finds this ridiculous because he thinks it would be best if they never ran into those dangerous creatures again. Abel admits that it was surprising how they managed to collect so many magic stones from the wyverns, but he suddenly stops talking as he realizes that they have traveled quite far north. Though Abel is completely clueless about where exactly they've ended up, Rio nervously hopes that they haven't accidentally entered the Debuhi Empire, but Abel quickly reassures that this isn't the case, since the Empire is farther north. Rio is relieved, which makes Abel curious about why he seems to hate that place so much. Rio tells him that he has nothing personal against the Empire, but he simply dislikes the name, which Abel finds rather odd. Just then, Rio notices a road cutting through the landscape, and Abel observes that it's running east to west, so he looks around carefully and recognizes the area. Rio finds him lost in thought and asks if everything is alright, so Abel explains that if they follow the road west, they will soon reach the town of Kailati. This news excites Rio because he really looks forward to sleeping in a proper bed, but Abel thought Rio wanted to fight even more wyverns. Rio quickly explains that those are two completely different things. Abel mentions that the food in the town of Kailati is delicious and insists Rio should definitely try it. This makes Rio even more excited to visit this new town. A while later, they arrive in Kailati and head to a nearby tavern. While they're sitting there, Abel suggests that Rio should register with the Adventurers Guild, but Rio has no idea what that means. Abel explains that guild registration will serve as his identification, allowing him to enter different towns and countries without paying any entry fees. Abel says that when they arrived in the city, he acted as Rio's guarantor and paid a silver coin as the entry fee, but Rio jokingly asks if it was part of a sneaky plan to make him a servant. Abel keeps trying to convince Rio to join the guild, explaining that they can sell magic stones and monster materials there for a good price. Otherwise, Rio would have to become an alchemist to use those things, which would be a huge hassle. Rio is surprised that they have alchemy in this world, but he's shocked even further when the waiter brings his plate of curry rice to their table. He thinks to himself that, in most Isekai stories, the protagonist has to travel a lot in order to find curry, but somehow it already exists in this world. Abel asks Rio what he's mumbling about, so Rio says it's nothing and takes the first bite, but it's so tasty that he can't stop himself from devouring it in seconds. Rio orders another plate and asks Abel if they have curry like this in Lune. Abel confirms that they do. He is glad that Rio enjoyed it, and he admits that it was quite tasty. Even the next day, as they leave the town, Rio continues to praise the curry they had the last night, and he asks Abel to spill the beans about the best desserts in town. Abel is caught off guard and doesn't know how to answer, so he just says he'll think about it. They continue their journey, and after spending a few days walking, they finally see the town of Lune from a distance. As they reach the city gates, the guard recognizes Abel and says everyone was worried since he'd been missing for months. Abel explains that he managed to safely return thanks to Rio. The guard excitedly shakes Rio's hand, grateful that he saved his friend. Abel then pays the entry fee, once again acting as his guarantor. The guard then asks if they will be heading straight to the guild, and mentions that Abel's friends are currently out of town, but once they return, they will be shocked to see him. Once inside the city, Abel suggests they head straight to the guild to register Rio as an adventurer, since Abel can help him rank up. Rio is curious and asks what that means. Abel explains that new adventurers usually start at rank F, but with the endorsement of a B rank or higher, they can start at rank E or even D. Rio quickly realizes that this means Abel must be above B rank, which makes him feel proud. While Abel gets shy and quickly changes the subject, Abel goes on to explain that higher ranks allow access to better quests, which also means better rewards. He recommends ranking up, though he adds that Rio probably won't need to worry about money anyway, since they will earn a lot by selling the wyvern magic stones. Rio wonders if the magic stones are really that valuable, and Abel explains that they're actually quite rare. Selling them all at once could even crash the market, but he trusts the guild will know how to handle it. They finally arrive at the guild, where the receptionist, Nina, is shocked to see Abel that is still alive. Soon, all the adventurers gather around him, and Rio realizes that Abel is actually pretty popular. Rio thinks he should give them some space and steps outside the guild to enjoy the fresh air. Just then, an elf girl walks past him and notices Rio wearing the Fairy King's outfit. She mentions he must have impressed impressed the Fairy King quite a lot. Rio is unable to answer properly, so she says she's in a hurry and perhaps they will meet again sometime and walks off. A short while later, Abel takes Rio back inside the guild, where he tells everyone that he survived only because of Rio, who will soon be registering as an adventurer. Abel hopes they will all look after him. Rio is happy to be the center of attention as the others praise him for saving Abel. Moving on, we see Rio's registration process, and Abel says he wishes to recommend him for D rank, but Nina is shocked, since this is the first time anyone from his party is recommending an adventurer. Abel says Rio is very talented, but Nina tells him that she has no problem with it, though according to the rules, they must present some kind of physical proof of strength. Abel says that he was hoping to speak to the guild master about it, so Nina goes to inform the guild master about their request while they wait in the meeting room. When Nina shares the good news, the guild master rushes over, eager to see Abel with his own eyes. He had been very worried about him. He then notices Rio and introduces himself as Huma Glass, the guild master of Loon. He thanks Rio, making him feel a bit awkward, and Rio simply says he was just in the right place at the right time. Abel tells Hugh that he wants to endorse Rio for a rank up, so Hugh asks about the required proof. Abel confidently assures him that Rio is actually stronger than he is. Abel shows him the magic stones, and Hugh realizes that their green color means they belong to wind elementals. Based on their size and vivid glow, he suspects they might be from wyverns, which Abel confirms. Hugh is shocked, finding it hard to believe they managed to collect so many, since fighting that many wyverns would normally require an entire army. He worries that if such monsters were to attack the city, it could be completely destroyed, but Abel reassures him there's no need for concern, as they encountered the creatures far to the south of the Malefic Mountains. Rio is surprised to hear the name, so Abel tells him that earlier, after they found the road to Kailati, he realized where they were. Hugh reveals that it is said no one has made it through those mountains alive, and even experienced adventurers don't go there unless they have a very compelling reason. Hugh can't believe they defeated all those wyverns by themselves, but now that he has seen the physical proof of Rio's abilities, he has no objections to the rank up request. Suddenly, Abel's party, the Crimson Sword, arrives at the guild. Abel goes to catch up with his old friends, while Rio heads off to finish the rest of the registration process. As Rio enters the guild master's offices, he starts to wonder if he truly deserves the D rank. Hugh explains that while Abel is very gifted, even he can't take down a wyvern alone, so if Rio helped defeat several, he must be exceptionally talented. As Hugh pats Rio on the back to congratulate him, he's surprised by how strong Rio's body feels for a mage. Just then, Nina arrives with the paperwork and properly introduces herself before starting Rio's registration. She begins the short interview by asking his name and confirming that he's a mage. Then she asks about his magic element, and he tells her it's water. When she asks where he lives, Rio explains that he just arrived in the city. Nina lets him know that for the first 300 days after joining the guild, he's allowed to stay in the guild's lodgings. Nina asks if he's ever been in a dungeon before, and he admits he hasn't, so she tells him about a monthly introductory dungeoneering course, which offers a full guide for new adventurers and tips on what to watch out for. When Nina asks if he's interested, Rio excitedly says yes. She lets him know the next course starts in 2 days and says she'll sign him up. Nina tells him to be at the meeting room on the 3rd floor at 9 o'clock that day. When Rio looks surprised, Nina adds that there's a clock in town to help him keep track of the time. With that, Nina wraps up the paperwork, but Rio gets confused when she says it's time to start the actual registration. She asks Rio to place his hand on a crystal, and the device instantly creates his guild card, which she then hands to him. Nina congratulates him on officially becoming a registered adventurer. As they leave, Hugh feels relaxed because he was really worried about Abel, since things looked quite grim in his absence. He thinks he would never want to experience that again, which makes him thank Rio even more because he saved them all. He remembers he hasn't informed someone about Abel's return, so he immediately grabs his communication device to make a call. Meanwhile, Abel takes Rio Rio on a walk, and when Rio asks where they're going, Abel tells him they're off to get his rewards for helping him get back to the town. Abel mentions he wants to buy Rio some new clothes and a staff. Rio thanks him, but admits he doesn't understand why Abel keeps mentioning a staff. Abel explains it's because he is a magician, but Rio tells him he can cast magic without one, and he can also use his sword in close combat. Abel is shocked to hear that and asks about the sword, so Rio shows it to him. However, Abel thinks it looks more like a knife than a proper sword. He worries that he might have hurt Rio's feelings, but Rio doesn't mind at all. Instead, he asks for Abel's help since there are still many things he doesn't know about this world. Rio soon learns that a day here is 24 hours, a week has 7 days, and a month has 30 days, basically the same as on Earth. He's surprised to learn that clothing is also measured in centimeters. It feels like too much of a coincidence, and Rio starts to wonder if there might be some kind of connection. Maybe someone else was teleported to this world before him. That would explain why so many things are the same as his home planet. Abel then invites him to his party where Rio is the guest of honor, and he introduces Rio to everyone as his savior. The next morning, Nina walks with him and asks if he had fun last night. Rio says he did, but admits he's just a little exhausted. They soon arrive at the guild dorms, and as they enter the room, they see a guy doing push-ups. When he notices Nina, he gets flustered. She tells them that Rio will be their new roommate, and the two introduce themselves as Nils and Ito. After reminding Rio about his class, Nina leaves. Nils comments on how beautiful she is, while Ito says they should stop being so formal with each other. Just then, Nina returns with another newcomer who will also be joining them as a roommate. Ito thinks the new guy looks pretty young, and Ammon confirms he's just 16. Sadly, after losing his parents, becoming an adventurer was his only option to make a living. Nina tells Rio that Ammon will also be taking the basic dungeon course with him, so they should go together, which they both agree to. Meanwhile, Abel's friend Lynn can't believe that a mage could create a thick ice shield. She thinks they're usually too thin and can be shattered by something as simple as an air slash. She also insists that using it midair to attack an enemy is completely impossible, but Abel tells her that Rio did exactly that. Lynn explains that magic can typically only be conjured close to the caster, so none of it makes sense to her. Still, the priestess says that if Abel is saying all this, then it must be true. However, Lynn fears that if Rio were to ever turn against them, it would be a big issue, or if he joins the kingdom as an enemy. Abel assures them that it won't ever happen. When they ask how he can be so sure, he explains it's because Rio hates the kingdom's name. The next day, Rio is taking dungeon class. The instructor announces that they've finished their introductory lessons on dungeon exploration.